Greetings to everyone. I'm Nationalist again, and this is ClassroomTZ. Thank you for choosing this channel. And today we're going to discuss the second topic in Form 4 history, and named the Nationalism and Decolonisation. Sometimes referred to nationalism in Africa. I'm Nationalist, and I'm going to be with you from the beginning of this topic up to the infinity of the end of this topic. Before wasting time, let's check our table for content, what we're going to discuss in this topic. The first thing you're supposed to know as a student, it is nationalism in Africa. That's the first thing. And then you're going to discuss the background and introduction of what is nationalism in Africa. From there, you also discuss the rise of social welfare associations. And after the rise of social welfare association, the next is the rise of protest and religious movements. And then the rise of mass nationalism in the political parties in Africa. Decolonization through constitutional means. Decolonization through armed struggle. Decolonization through revolution means. Those were our table of content. So these are the things we're supposed to discuss in this topic, from number 1 up to number 7. So let's go and start the slide number 1, nationalism in Africa. Before going deeper in nationalism in Africa, you should understand that as usually I'm saying, in Form 1 to Form 4 course or 4-year course of secondary history, our history subject is divided into 3 phases or 3 contents. You're supposed to discuss pre-colonial Africa, and also discuss colonial Africa, and the lastly is post-colonial Africa. In Form 1 and Form 2, you discuss the pre-colonial Africa, Form 3 colonial Africa, and in Form 4, there is a bridge between colonial Africa and the post-colonial Africa, and then the post-colonial Africa itself. So this topic here, we're going to discuss deeply on how Africa passed from colonialism to post-colonial Africa. How Africa ended the colonial domination and became an independent continent. And this is the beginning of post-colonial African history. So number 1, it is the meaning of what is nationalism. As it already defined here, nationalism is the feeling of national consciousness or awareness by the people that they are a member of the nation and desire freedom from colonial rule. The feeling of nationalhood to belong to a certain country. There are so many several meanings of nationalism, but the simple one is a desire or consciousness of people to get out of colonial domination. That's the simple meaning of nationalism. And there we have African nationalism. African nationalism, so here it was the desire of African people to terminate or to end all of colonial domination in their territories. We should understand it. In the last topic of Form 2, we learned industrial capitalism. The last topic of Form 2, industrial capitalism, it was a beginning, or it was a foundation of establishment of colonialism that you studied in Form 3, the first topic. In that topic of industrial capitalism, we checked how agents of colonialism prepared the Africans for colonialism. And then, in topic number 1 in Form 3, we learned on the establishment of colonialism. So the topic number 1 of Form 3, it will officialize the African we colonized. And then, after being colonized, we learned different concepts, different content explaining how we colonized the effect and so. And here, in Form 4, we are going to learn how we ended the colonialism. Beginning of colonialism, it was there since industrial capitalism, and now we are going to check how our great fathers and mothers, they ended the colonialism. So African nationalism is the desire for African people to terminate or to end all forms of foreign rule. When you say foreign rule, we mean colonialism. It was or is political will of African in opposition to foreign domination. It entails African struggle against Western colonialism and imperialism. You should understand our main enemy here, it is colonialism. And when you go deeper, what is colonialism? We cannot discuss colonialism without discussing capitalism. So our main core enemy, it is capitalism, the founder of all those problems we discussed in Form 3, and now we are discussing here in Form 4 how Africans ended those problems caused by capitalism. So generally, African nationalism was or is the desire. When we say is currently, we mean still there somehow there is colonial domination in form of neo-colonialism. Still we are struggling to get out. So in other language, maybe we got partial independence, not full independence, because somehow they left some of elements make us to keep depending on them. So that way we are saying currently still we are struggling for independence or nationalism. So the desire of the sons and daughters of Africa to end, to eliminate, terminate all forms of colonial exploitation, oppression, subjection, and discrimination, and the other as I ended there. So in short, my dear students, when we say African nationalism, as I tried to explain different words here, it was a struggle for African people to end all colonialism affairs in their countries. Or in short, they are struggling to retain back their lost independence. That is simple meaning of nationalism. Then we have phases of African nationalism. This is struggle for nationalism or struggle for the independence divided into two phases. Phase number 1 is nationalism before 1945. You should understand this. Nationalism or African nationalism refers to the struggle for African to protect or to get their independence. That's the meaning of nationalism. Do not confuse with the European nationalism. As European nationalism, it is the desire of European people to increase their territories, their boundaries, and protect their boundaries. But in Africa, different. Before expanding our territories, we were supposed to bring back first our territories. That was African nationalism. So, if all of us were agreed nationalism, it was the struggle for the African to bring back their independence. And then let's point out when this struggle started. The struggle for Africans to bring back their independence started early, at the beginning of introduction of colonialism. And that way, we categorize these struggles into two phases: nationalism before 1945 and nationalism after 1945. And later on, or lastly, we should discuss why 1945 as a midpoint. Why not the other year? Why we selected after 1945 or before 1945? I will explain later. But now let's check. When we say nationalism before 1945, what do we mean? This nationalism before 1945, as I try to explain here, is taking us back in the African reactions after establishment of colonialism. If you were clear or smart during the discussion of introduction of establishment of colonialism in Africa, as a party we discussed the reactions of Africans or response of Africans toward the establishment of colonialism. Africans responded to two ways in the establishment of colonialism. First group, they collaborated or they accepted the establishment of colonialism. That was the first response. But the other group, they said no, we are resisting. They said we want to protect our freedom. So this the group we are saying it was nationalism struggle before 1945. In short, nationalism before 1945, it means African resistance due to the imposition of colonial rule. The first or the initial response or initial resistance of African in the imposition of colonialism, that referred as nationalism before 1945. And that way here we're going to have examples of different African resistance acted as an example of nationalism before 1945. Some of them were large-scale resistance and some were small-scale resistance. But all in all, it was a struggle for Africans struggled to get back or to protect their independence, their political freedom, their resources, and their other issues. So here we have examples of African resistance here against the Germans from 1891 to 1898 in Tanganyika, Mazui Dynasty resistance against the British in Kenya, Majimaji War in Tanganyika against German, Shona and Debere, sometime referred to Chimrenga War in Southern Rhodesia, current Zimbabwe, Mandika resistance or Samoltura resistance against the French, also in the Victory I Italo-Ethiopian War. It was Ethiopia versus Italians, and unfortunately Ethiopians won for the first time. So these are the examples of struggle shown by Africans at the beginning, that we are conscious, we want our independence, we want to protect our Africanicity, we want to protect our land and everything they had. But unfortunately, this struggle failed. As we checked, there are so many resistance. Africa failed, and at the end we colonized, except this Ethiopia and some cases of Liberia and Sierra Leone because of some reasons. Because of the failure of the first phase, then we are going to the second phase. But before going to the second phase, we should understand what caused the early nationalism. Nationalism before 1945. Number one, because of forced labor. So in short here, we're going to discuss, or we're going to explain, we're going to list some of negative actions shown by Europeans toward the Africans, and those negative actions made the Africans to struggle for the independence. If Europeans were friendly to us, we don't need to have this kind of reactions. These were people from outside. Before Europeans, we got some of people from outside. Example, Arabs. Arabs were here in Africa before Europeans. But we never waged war against the Arabs because we were living as a friend. It was interaction. And mostly during Arabs interaction, it was trade interaction. But the way Europeans came, it was not like trade interaction. That's why Africans came up weapons to fight back. So these are some of actions done by Europeans to Africans, made the Africans to struggle for the independence or to resist at the beginning. So forced labor, land alienation, introduction of European goods, imposition of heavy taxes, destruction of African traditional values, racism and segregation against Africans, and the colonial oppression and the injustice. All of these were some of actions done by Europeans to Africans and made the Africans to say enough is enough, we want our political independence. All these points, I'm sure, are not first time in your head. We discussed you had all of these points into different areas, different time. So although sometimes we call them yebo points, most repeated point in history. If you are historians, I'm sure you passed through these words in several times.